Welcome to No Place Like Home with Mike and Megan Orp, where we believe the center of the universe is your home, and our home, and every other home on the planet. On this podcast, we talk about anything related to that. Homeschooling, parenting, marriage, relationships, gardening, really anything, as long as it has to do with being home.
On today's episode, we're going to talk about world schooling or travel for education.
Which has nothing to do with being home.
I know. We're total frauds with this podcast.
Yeah.
So
Well, you have to have a home, to like go away from it.
That's true. To appreciate it. We should probably welcome like everyone to the podcast, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
Welcome, everybody.
We're just going. Okay. Yeah. So we've been gone for a little bit, but we're happy to be back on the podcast, recording again.
Definitely.
And I think our recent travels are informing what we want to talk about today.
Yeah.
Because we do love home, but there is some value in kind of going away from it for every once in a while. And I think another thing that's worth mentioning about travel, because we did quite a bit of traveling, you and I, both just with each other and with our family. And something that we discovered is that as long as we are together and especially with a family, wherever we are is our home.
Yeah.
And so I feel like home is in a lot of ways a state of mind and sort of a state of being with with the people you're with. And so you don't necessarily have to leave and feel like you've completely left your home. You can kind of take it with you.
Definitely.
Just in your relationships and that sort of thing.
Yeah. If you are not familiar with our past, in 2016,
Yep.
we loaded all 9 of our kids into a van, really, and had a fifth wheel that was pulled behind a truck, and we lived in that.
I pulled that.
Yep.
It wasn't just like pulled by some autonomous truck.
Yeah.
I was driving the truck.
That was kind of an awkward way of saying that we had an RV, fifth wheel. That's the kind that like hooks into the bed of a truck, but we couldn't all ride. You can't ride in that while you're driving, and we couldn't all ride in the truck. So I drove a 12-passenger van, and we crisscrossed the country a few times in that, and lived in it for a year, and made that our home. And then we decided we didn't want to be done traveling, but that we wanted to go over and leave the country. And so we went over to Europe and Western Europe, a little bit into Morocco and Africa. But I did that for almost a year. Mm-hmm. And when it was all said and done, it had been 2 years of traveling straight. And so we know a lot about traveling, and we've traveled since then with our kids. But I will say, even though we did feel like it's not like we were homeless. We never felt homeless, and we never felt like, we were without that. But we don't ever plan on traveling full time again, because there is value to having a home base.
Right, definitely. So we're glad we have that again.
Yeah.
But there is value in travel, and I think there's many levels to it. And I think we want to talk about some of that and why it's beneficial for really anybody, but especially I think parents and children in an education sort of, I guess.
I think it's an important part of. It can be a really great tool in helping you raise good humans.
Right. So let's talk about that.
Now, I should think also, I always want people to know that, Mike, you and I were not travelers growing up.
No, not beyond your kind of typical
visit family.
We would go visit family, and my family did a couple longer road trips to California from Idaho. So nothing.
Yeah, I mean, and we did a couple beach trips, or a few beach trips.
Right. But we weren't travelers. That wasn't sort of a thing we did on a regular basis.
Yeah, and so I actually was always enamored with the thought of travel. And in college, I remember there would be the people that would visit campus and like have their tables out to go teach English in another country or study abroad. And I just didn't think I wonder when I look back, like, why didn't I do those things? You wanted to do them. Yeah, I guess I just didn't have the confidence to think that I could leave the country. I don't know. And so,
well, yeah, it seems like a monumental thing, and it's this kind of unknown that you're not sure if you can actually kind of wade into.
Yeah, and my parents weren't extensive travelers. They've still never gone to Europe, though they would love it, I'm sure.
Yep.
And so it didn't enter into what a possibility for life.
Yeah.
It just wasn't there.
Right.
And our first real travel experience as a couple was when we traveled for our adoption trips
Right.
to China. And I remember coming home from that. It was our first trip to pick up Pearl and Esther in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
Was 3 weeks long, and it was really hard. And I came
Yeah.
back and I was like really disappointed in myself. That like, because I got there and I was really thrown off by the culture and the smells and the sights and sounds, and like I wasn't comfortable and I
Sure.
wasn't
You're just out of
enamored
your
the whole
element,
time. Yeah.
so-
And I was like, dang it. I really thought I would be a traveler. I thought I would be like one of those cool people that like, whoa, look at this culture. And like, and I was really disappointed. Like, well, there you have it. You're not
Right.
good at that. But I mean, also I recognized in the time, maybe a little bit then, but since like, come on, that was an incredibly stressful trip.
Well, yeah. I mean, a trip to adopt someone is not as it's completely different than regular travel, and
Yeah.
we had that sense. I remember being on those trips and be like, "Is this different because you've got this huge life event happening, and you're bringing someone in to your, you know, that you don't
a child
know."
that feels a little bit like like a child who's going through a very traumatic experience.
Right. So
yeah.
it does not really mirror that at all,
Yeah.
or represent it. However, it still was our first time being in a foreign place, and
we had to get our
it was
passports for that.
off-putting.
Yeah.
So I think we learned some from it, but it wasn't really indicative of your typical
Yeah.
travel.
And then our next time leaving the country was when we were doing the RV trip, and we were in San Diego,
Oh yeah.
and we met up with an old friend of yours, and he drove us across the border into Mexico, and it like for a date night, and it like
Yeah.
blew our minds.
Because he's from Mexico, so
Yeah.
and it was this weird moment. Where
wait,
wow,
you can just leave
we
the
just
country?
drove into another country.
And like we're like looking around like we're in another country right now. Doesn't look very different.
And we're like, should we be nervous? Like, is this dangerous? I mean, so yeah, that was strangely
It was exhilarating,
big experience
remember?
for us,
And it was
pretty
strange
simple.
how easy it was.
Yeah,
We were just like, wait,
Well,
are there
getting
still
in-
roads here? Like really, you think things like that, and you know it's silly to think it, but
there's
you're
a
like,
freeway here.
there's a freeway in Mexico? What?
Yeah, shows how naive we were.
Well, you just can't help it. It's not like you thought there wasn't a freeway in Mexico. It's just like, oh yeah, of course there's a freeway in Mexico. I mean,
Yeah.
I felt the same way when we went to France.
Yeah,
But then
where are we going with this?
well, I'm just kind of bringing everybody through so that if there's anybody there that out there who feels like that's just
Oh, it's out of reach.
out
or
of reach, or like that's not like it never occurred to us, and also it just seemed so expensive.
Yeah.
And then, but it's kind of funny what really sealed the deal for us about wanting to do world travel, and that was going to Epcot.
Oh yeah. Thanks, Disney.
We decided to do Disney during our RV trip, and we'd never done it, and it was a very big decision because for a family of 11, that is a major investment. And
Yeah.
as we were buying the tickets, I was saying to Mike, "There's no way that's worth it.
But
That is so expensive."
yeah, I don't know what was prompting us. I think because we're on this trip, we're in Florida, and it's like we
Yeah, let's
need
just
to
do
do
it.
that.
But it was actually an incredibly fun. It was really fun.
It was a fun week.
Yeah, it was really fun, and I don't regret it. We haven't done it again, but
Nope.
But when we were in Epcot, if you guys haven't been to Disney World, and I don't know about Disneyland, they may have the same thing there, but one of their parks is called Epcot, and the theme of it is like the world. And so there's like different sections of the park that are like, different parts of the world. And it totally, I was like, dude, I love this. I
They
want to
do
do
a
this.
pretty good job,
Yeah.
of making you kind of feel like you walked into a
Yeah.
different,
Like
part of the
it's-
world.
Yeah, it really does feel like it. That's silly.
I mean, it's a little different once you go to those places for real, I should say, because they had a little Moroccan sort of thing, didn't they?
yeah.
Then we went to Morocco. The smells are a little different, I think. Is what
Yes,
you said.
but I mean, I will say now that we've traveled, like, they really are mimicking, like, and it's not like just like one building. Like, it's like they create these like alleys, and so it's like really fun. It's like
yeah,
it's play travel.
yeah.
But it was like, I want to go to these places for real. We have to do this. And so it wasn't very long. I think it was a month later that we were out on a date and we're like looking at flights
Uh-huh.
and we bought tickets, one-way tickets, tickets to Paris. We bought 11 one-way tickets to Paris.
Yeah. And then we were committed. We had to figure out the rest of it from there.
And so that was in
kinda how we roll.
February of 2017. And we traveled in July. Is that right?
Yes.
Or
Yep.
June?
It was July.
July of 2017.
We left on July 24th.
And we came back in April of the next year. That's a general overview of all the travel we have done.
Right.
Both to say we know the world of no travel and overwhelmed and like where travel is like a total mystery. How could we ever do that?
Yeah, it
it's
seems
just like a pipe dream.
unattainable.
Yeah, to the like it's been very normalized. And it's funny how you actually I still go back to the like travel seems like a pipe dream sometimes.
If it's been a while,
If it's been a while, you're like, oh man, how do you do that?
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, so I wanted to go over some of the things that we have discovered about travel and how they really can be a really amazing tool to utilize as parents and for your family and for your kids and for yourself. And I'm a total believer in travel. Now, I will say that I think everybody thinks, oh, travel's so good for you because it's going to make you, I don't know.
Like broaden your horizons to
Broaden
like
your
other
horizons.
cultures and that kind of romantic idea of like being exposed to different peoples.
Yeah, and you're
and
going to
different
come back
places.
with like
and you're gonna
dreadlocks
be
and like
this
wearing all these cool clothes.
You'll
from
be this
around
like
the world.
wise sage that's seen the world.
Yeah.
And have your cool hat too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I've
Something
bought
like
those
that.
hats in other countries and they seem really cool
Like
when
the
you're
Instagram
there.
hat?
No, just like any sort of hat in another country that seems cool. And then you come home, you're like, when am I going to wear this? Never. I'm never going to wear this. I feel like a fool. But more power to those people who actually wear the clothes that they buy in other countries.
Right.
But I think that I remember my experience in China was that I was disappointed with how hard it is. And I was disappointed that I wasn't just like totally comfortable with new cultures. And as we traveled more, that didn't go away. I'm still a person.
Turns
I
out.
still believe some ideas are better than others and some parts of culture are healthier than others. And so I didn't go to every culture and be like, I embrace all of you. And I don't mean all of you individually, but all of your traditions and ideas and all of the ways that you do things. And they are all good.
Right.
You don't have that experience. And I actually think that's really good.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I'm just going to throw it out there that travel is challenging and that's a good thing.
Sure. That's part of the point of it,
Yeah.
is that it's not easy.
Yeah. And like it challenges preconceived notions. And I think that's what everybody thinks, that you're going to become really open-minded. But sometimes it actually, you see ideas and it actually...
Or you see how things operate in different countries,
and
whatever.
it confirms how you felt about things. It doesn't always change your mind. Yeah. You can actually be really grateful for the way that things are done at home, or whatever your form of government is, or whatever. So I don't think that that's always holds true, but I think what it does is it gives you the example. It gives you the opportunity to explore different ways of doing things.
Sure.
And to weigh them against the way that you do things, and make you think. It really makes you think. Like, here's a really dumb example, but just to keep it light. In Europe, when they're doing construction on a road, they have, like when you have to stop and wait and there's always like somebody there with like a flag.
Or like the stop slow sign.
Yeah, well, and when you're like sitting the first in line and the person with the flag in the like vest and the hat is just like, you're just like looking at each other.
Right, you're just waiting.
Well, in Europe, they just have a cone with like a light. And you're like, yeah, we don't need people. It
You're saying like a stoplight.
It's like a
sort of thing.
stoplight.
Yeah.
And when it's your turn,
It's
on your side,
timed.
it turns green. And then you go through.
And the other side is waiting
Now
for theirs.
theirs is red. And you're
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's so much smarter. Why do we have this person standing there? That seems really unnecessary. Like, just do that. Or how, like, their toll system, you use credit cards.
Right.
And we had just come from the United States where all
All
over
the
freaking
all
New
the
York
booths.
City, it's supposed to be the most modern, one of the most modern cities in the world, and they don't accept credit card.
Yeah, at their toll booths, like you gotta
Oh my
come up with
gosh.
cash.
Yeah.
There's a whole story behind not having enough money and being
Yeah,
like,
and you're
goodness.
just like, yes, right? It's just a card. And you go in Europe, you pull up and you just swipe your card and the thing opens and you're like, yes, see
There's
how
not a
simple
person
that
saying-
was? That was so easy. So, you know, there are things like that are good and to consider. So that's my first thought.
Yeah. And so as you're saying that, we sort of glossed over a little bit, but the fact that travel is hard, and this is, and everything we're saying is good for adults and for children. So I don't know if we need to continually like separate these out, because travel is tiring, and a lot of traveling is boring activities, right? Like you take all this time to get to a place, and then you see the thing, and then you take a bunch of time leaving the place, right? And most of your time is actually spent not super exciting activities.
Airports, buses,
Right.
trains.
And then when you get to the place, it's maybe this really cool thing, but because you're tired or because of one of your kids is acting up, it might not have the magic that you were kind of hoping it would have. But I think the reality is that what we've realized is places are just places. And if I go there and I don't have this completely magical experience, that's okay. Like it was still an experience, and I've learned some patience along the way. I've learned to kind of roll with it when things aren't going just as planned. Again, for me as an adult, and as the kids can see, like this is a process.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we can get expectations that are a little too high about how things are going to go. And we learn how to be flexible and to say, it was still awesome, even though, we got a flat tire along the way, or our flight was delayed, whatever. Let's just make the best of it.
Yeah.
And everyone learns to be flexible.
Yeah, last year in 2021, Mike and I had the opportunity to go to Mexico for his parents' 50th wedding anniversary with his siblings and their spouses. And we had our 20th wedding anniversary the year before, but since it was 2020, we hadn't done anything. And so we went a few days early and stayed not like down in Mexico. So many people, when we go down there, we stay in these amazing resorts on the coast that are all inclusive and like amazing. You just like get in a shuttle at the airport, get taken to it. And what it does is it cuts out a lot of discomfort.
Uh-huh.
And so we decided in a few days before to actually go to a city, stay in an Airbnb, or it's kind of like a hotel, and walk around on our own, rent a car, and then go to the resort with the family. And there's definitely something to be said for the comfort of resorts, and the restaurants are all there. The food is ever present. Mm-hmm. Like the walkways are clean and everybody's nice and like everything's taken care of. But being able to experience it back to back was interesting. And how I think maybe, and I think a lot of people who do travel don't ever leave the resort experience. But what they don't realize is at first you feel like I'm not having any fun because I'm stressed, but you get better at handling the stress.
Oh, you mean when you're not in the resort like bubble, as it were,
or like, oh my gosh, it seems really dirty, or is it dangerous, or
right.
all of these
that's
things.
a major question.
And it's actually when we first experienced that was in China, right? And then when we started traveling again, we started to experience it again, and I was really disappointed in myself for feeling that. But interestingly, it becomes that kind of stress and exhaustion starts to become the thing you crave from your travel experiences.
Right.
Because there's an exhilaration to it and you feel very alive and you're very present in the moment and everything is new and everything's kind of blowing your mind, and it's very stressful at first, but you learn to handle that stress, and so do your kids. So absolutely, when we first start traveling, your kids are probably going to say they hate these other countries.
It's possible, yeah.
Because they're gross to them or they're overwhelming to them. And it is overwhelming because the grocery store is different. Like everything's different. Like the way you get gas is different. The way you drive on the road is different, and the signs and the way you're supposed to interact with people is different. And that can be exhausting and stressful. Yeah. And so the resort experience kind of takes that all away.
Yeah.
And so You get to see these beautiful places, but I'm telling you, that's the magic of travel. That's the best part. That's once you experience it, that's what you want to have again. You want to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You want to have the possibility of almost anything happening. You want to be in a situation where you don't speak the same language as the other person. And like, there's an exhilaration to that, knowing like, I am going to have to buy something. We're going to see how this goes because I don't speak their language.
Yeah. You have to walk into situations that you're definitely gonna be uncomfortable. You're not gonna know what to do necessarily, but you just have to
Yeah,
kind of
and
figure it out.
I'm so excited that we gave our kids the chance to do that again and again and again. Not only because do you start craving it, but because those skills don't leave them when they go home. They have learned
Right.
to be adaptable.
Yeah.
They've learned to like trust themselves a little bit. They've learned to trust things that are different, right? Like, because I tell you, when you go to these other countries, no matter what, it's different.
Yeah.
It looks different and smells different and people act different. And at first you think bad. And like I said, sometimes it is bad. Sometimes you are going to still decide, I don't like that. But other times you realize, is it really that big of a deal that
Yeah.
it's different? Is it actually, like I thought it was gross, but it's actually probably not that big of a deal. And
Yeah.
you learn, I still really appreciate hand washing. Some
Yeah.
countries don't as much as others, but I don't mind other parts that used to bother me more. I don't mind things being a little bit more broken down. We're all, it's like you look around and realize everybody else is pretty comfortable with it. There's a lot there, but I think give your kids the gift of learning how to be dynamic, which is maybe able to handle change and being able to roll with change, and give them the gift of also the patience that travel requires.
Yeah.
You think you're doing it wrong when things are breaking down.
Sure.
And you definitely felt that at the beginning.
Or when things are just boring, really, because a lot of it is boring and you're not constantly doing really fun and exciting things. And your kids might reflect that back to you. And it's like, this is just how it goes.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I have to make the most of your time. It's like, if we're bored, we're like failing. It's like, no, that's part of the deal, man. Unless you're at a water park or something. Like, anyways, I think there's that aspect to it as well.
Yeah. Or if we're stressed, we're failing.
Yeah. But
Or if there's hiccups, we're failing. But there are
all of it's instructive and all of it is good. And it does take some time for the kids and for you to kind of get used to that. So it takes more than one trip really to get used to it, I think. Because if you just go once on a trip with a family, especially internationally if you can, and then never go again, you probably never got the chance to then go again and probably reap some of what you sowed on the first trip as far as like the lessons you learned along the
No,
way.
we're making it sound really awful. And I still want to talk a little bit more about that discomfort and the stress, but I do want to say there are amazing magical moments that you dream of on these trips. And you get to see things that blow your mind. There are things out there in the world that are mind blowing.
Right.
It's not all hype. Like, you think it's going to be, but I think the first time I realized is when we went to Paris and we saw the Eiffel Tower. I mean, all of us have seen the Eiffel Tower in pictures
I've seen it
a million times over.
Yeah.
It's on t-shirts. There's little Eiffel Tower statues. And like, I mean, it's like, yeah, I know what the Eiffel Tower looks like. So I thought like, yeah, well, we should probably go see the Eiffel Tower. And then we walk up and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And it's hard to explain why it's amazing, but it's massive. It's beautiful. I don't know. It's, so I'm not saying that. And Machu Picchu was the same way. I mean, Machu Picchu was mind blowing. It was mind blowing. It is truly a wonder of the world. There are some other places we've been that weren't as mind blowing, but by and large, Mont Saint Michel. I mean, like,
it's all
the streets of Morocco, like, they were mind blowing.
Yeah.
And so they're out there.
And then things that are stateside, like Arches National Park.
Oh my gosh,
amazing.
Arches.
Or the Sequoias. I mean,
yeah.
There's
the Oregon coast, like,
it doesn't have to be international. I guess.
Even like the National Mall or National Gallery in Washington D.C. with all those beautiful buildings, like, there are amazing things out there that will take your breath away. So I don't want you to think that most of it's boring, but one of the things in between is it requires a lot of effort to get there. It really does. And you could pay a lot more money to make it require less effort to get there and to take away some of that stress. But I'm telling you, you're missing out if you do. I mean, like we recently, like I think it was last year or something, we heard about how like if you're really wealthy, there's a different terminal at the LA airport that you can pay to go to where there are no lines and like.
Yeah, this is for like movie stars and whatnot.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, and you're like, that does sound amazing because you don't wait in security. You just, and then they take you straight to your plane. Right.
Like in a car, it drives to the gate and you get on.
Yeah. And like, it doesn't, you don't have to be famous. You just have to have enough money. Yeah. And you're like, man, wouldn't that be crazy? Like to go through that different terminal to be that rich. And it's like, but that's the part, that's why celebrities become horrible people because it is the worst. I'm telling you, security at the airport, there's so many things that happen at the airport that can make you so mad. But because you are a good human, you need to be patient.
Right.
Because it's a lot of people trying to get through there, and some things don't make sense, and you know they don't make sense, and the person inflicting them upon you knows they don't make sense, but you got to do it. And you're just like, but it's really good to go, I can do this.
Yeah.
I can be patient. I can let this roll off my back. I can do this. And so I would say maybe don't be so concerned about removing all stressful moments, like where you have to ride on a train or in the subway or where you have to walk a few blocks or where, it's going to be, you have a layover, like, oh, I need a direct flight because it's going to be so much harder. Like, I don't know. It's good. And then modeling to your kids, like
that you can take it.
You can take it.
And
like,
you can take it and hopefully not be angry. Good mood. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's actually, if you want to talk about meditation and like doing all these things like to make yourself a better human, dude, meditation's got nothing on being patient through a travel day. Yeah, you want to become Zen. You want to become like a Zen guru master.
Do some
Go
traveling.
through security with your kids and don't get angry. It's totally possible. And it's amazing how good it feels to do it. To go, okay, that person was just super rude to us. Like, because people will push you and like take your spot.
They're probably having a hard day too. Like, we're all
and you're like
through.
Or you'll be like, there's no excuse for that. Like when you get up on an airplane and people push past you to get out first, you're like, what the heck? But it's like, I'm not gonna let it make me angry.
Maybe they have a connection.
No, I don't even have to do that. It's like, whatever. That's sad for them because I'm not going to be angry. Just let it go. Yeah. And that makes you, that's really good for your soul to do stuff like that.
And it's good to teach your kids.
To let them see you do it. Yeah.
To let them see it and then to experience it so that they can grow as well.
Yeah. Like, so in Mexico, when we were just there, we were all very hungry. And here's something, part of travel that the Sundance family, Christian and Katie, just shared with us that
they have a YouTube channel. Or
they have traveled for 14 years straight.
They are like travel warriors. Like,
they're amazing. They have 6 kids. We don't get close to how much they've done. And they're amazing people. Very, very kind, amazing people. And they said something to us like, well, you're always hungry when you're traveling. You just get used to it. Because they have very high, like they are very healthy. And so like they just don't eat until they get to the food that they want to eat. And I was like blown away because, And that their kids could handle it too. Yeah. And so we adopted that idea immediately, realizing, okay, you're hungry on travel days.
Just accept it.
So we're in Mexico. We get there. We didn't eat lunch. It's
and had breakfast super early.
Yeah. And you're just like, sometimes it makes it a lot harder if you're so obsessed with eating the next meal. Yeah. It's like we got in at lunchtime, then we had to get to our rental car, and then we had to get to our Airbnb. And then by that time it was like 4:00. And we had some little like snacks, but we were all very hungry. Yeah. And so we all decided we're in Mexico, we want tacos. This story, maybe I'm taking too long, but our Airbnb host tells us about this taco place that's really good and it's like authentic, he says. And so we decide, let's go. And we look online and find out that it doesn't actually open until 6. And it's like 4:30 at this time. Yeah. And some of our kids are like, oh, and you're like, it's okay, guys, let's just go walk around and then we'll just kind of wander our way up there. And so very hungry, we walk around, which was fun. It, gave us about an hour, and then we decided to start wandering up there. And I think we got some cookies on the way to hold us over.
Uh-huh.
And we get up there. Well, the walk was interesting.
Well, it was kind of, we were in a part of town that was not
Felt sketchy.
touristy at all.
Yeah, because it was not touristy. The sun's going down, and we're walking over like very rough sidewalks.
Yeah, like not, this is a rough, it appears to be a rough part of town. If you're in the States,
Well,
this
it's
would
definitely
be like,
more rough.
yeah.
But then, and I want to talk a little bit about safety, but, and we're all tired, and we get to the restaurant at like 5:50. And it's a lot further than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, the walk was.
And so we decide it's going to be dark, and so we decide, like, okay, when we get there, Mike, you go back.
Yeah.
But we get to the restaurant at like 5:50, and they're like, no, we don't open till 6:30. So it's like, what? And we're all exhausted. We're all very hungry. We got up at like 4 in the morning.
But to their credit, the kids had all had a good attitude.
Because partially
whole
because
thing.
we were just like, okay.
Yeah, we're just kind of rolling with it.
You don't get angry. You don't say to the person, well,
Yeah.
or like, what are we going to do? You say like, oh, okay. Is it okay if we sit here?
Yeah.
So we sat down on the steps of the restaurant. I don't know if they loved it. A big ragtag group. And we sat there, and they let us in at like 6:20.
Yeah.
Finally said, okay, come sit down at this table. And they made us some tacos, and we ate and went home.
And it was great.
Yeah.
It was good meal.
So that patience, your kids will be impatient, but I really believe they're watching your cues.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're staying relaxed about it, they will follow that. Now,
Sure, yeah.
there's age differences too, right? Like a 4-year-old, they're not watching your cues.
Yeah.
And so you should be traveling with snacks and
you
things
might
to help them.
need a different sort of travel, and that's the thing. It all has to be kind of adapted to your situation.
But you can totally do it. You just need to bring snacks with you and not be worried about like, I haven't had a healthy meal. It's like you'll have a million healthy meals in your lifetime. Just give them some snacks. Just hold them over. Even though that's not your normal thing, just give them some snacks.
Yeah.
But another thing that came up in that story is safety. And a lot of people have asked us about that. A lot of people comment on it. I hear it in conversation. I see it in articles that we act like everywhere outside of our hometown is just riddled with crime and horrible things.
Yeah, it's like is super scary.
In fact, when we were going to Europe,
Yeah.
we heard from a lot of Americans, oh, aren't you worried about going over there about like terrorist attacks?
Yeah. They were very concerned for our safety.
Yes, but what was ironic to us is our European followers were like, when we're visiting cities, well, aren't you worried about getting shot in one of these cities in the United States? You have so much gun crime.
Right, when we're in the U.S.
Yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, we all got to stop watching the news.
Yeah.
So that was
We're all
our
pretty
first
convinced.
lesson in that. Yeah, but no, we did not come upon any terrorists in Europe, if you're wondering. And in fact, in all of our travels around the world, there have been, oh my goodness, I have there been moments when we actually felt like this is not a safe situation?
I don't think so. I mean, let me think.
There have been moments when we definitely
There's
knew we're
moments
getting
when
taken advantage of financially.
You're uncomfortable, and you're also not sure if this person is trying to take more money than they should, or maybe like the whole like parking thing, like come park here, and they charge you for it.
Yeah, but
So
that happens in every
That
all
necessarily
over
isn't
the
about
world.
danger so much as about being, just aware of how much money you're spending. But no, I think we've been pretty. Now we are where I researched before we go.
Yeah.
And try to understand the area. Now, most of Western Europe, I didn't worry about.
Yeah.
Right. But going into Morocco, did research. Going to Mexico, did research.
And in Peru
And-
as well.
What's that?
And in Peru, yeah.
And Peru. And you have to remember when you're researching areas, you're going to get both sides of the spectrum. You will see websites that say you shouldn't go here. It's probably not safe. Other ones say don't worry about it. And then you'll get specific direction on, just don't go to this area, don't travel at night, different things like that. So you should be aware of your surroundings, but also just because it's different And also, I mean, this is those, I don't want to like give someone bad advice, but like the Department of State, the U.S. Department of State says that you shouldn't travel to Mexico,
Yeah.
like on their website.
To the Yucatan.
Yeah, where we were.
Yeah.
They say they advise you not to, but
Well, I just heard that because of COVID, everything's
maybe
on
that's
that list right
COVID.
now. Yeah.
But also, when we went to Morocco, Department of State suggested not traveling to Morocco, but we said, you know what? We knew people who had gone. We'd read lots of travel blogs who had gone, and we said, I think we can do this, and it was completely fine. We didn't
Now,
have any issues.
they don't have the same warning about Morocco or Mexico that they have about like Pakistan.
Sure, I
You
mean,
know.
yes, there's obvious places where there's
Strife.
there's political unrest, there's actual there's violence that's happening
Yeah,
on a
and I
larger
think
scale.
that's an important part of research. Now, some of you are like, this is crazy. I can't believe we've been talking about this.
Yeah,
But
maybe.
it isn't actually crazy because people are like, oh, there's gun violence happening in the Yucatan. Because didn't you hear about that murder last month or last year? It's like, do you actually know the stories of those murders?
Right.
These are like people who are trying to buy drugs
So
in the Yucatan, like
oft-
American tourists or Canadian tourists.
Very few people just out of nowhere are caught in that sort of situation. They usually have put themselves into a dangerous position.
Yeah, so like last month in January, I think, in the Yucatan,
Tulum?
in Tulum or somewhere, there was a shooting at a resort on the beach. And so then all of these articles are like, oh, violence at these resorts is rising. And they make it seem like if you don't read the article and you just read it, you're like, oh my gosh, Mexico's a mess right now.
Yeah.
But actually the story is a criminal, an ex-con Canadian man, went down to Mexico and got in a fight with one of his other ex-con like friends at this resort.
Right.
And he pulled out a gun.
Yeah.
And it's like, he's Canadian. So that could happen. That's where he was doing his crimes before. Like this could happen anywhere in any place.
Well,
And it's very, very rare. And like they fought amongst themselves,
Yeah.
right? Countries want to be safe, including the criminals that are there. Now, petty crime is different, right?
sure.
There's always going to be
You
people
could get
because of
pickpocketed and you could be swindled in some
we've
way.
never been pickpocketed. So that's not like it's real easy to have
yeah.
happen. People want to sell you all these things you can hide and blah, blah, blah. Like, no, just don't be stupid.
Well, there's some obvious things about where to put your wallet, and don't put your backpack on your back, put it on your front if you're in a large crowd, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And then I think also, as I'm saying this, I'm thinking of the story of your dad getting, in the situation in Mexico City. So I'm not going to
Sure.
say you're never going to have crime happen to you, but your brother also had that happen in Louisiana,
Yeah.
in the United States. So crime happens, but I do think
Those stories are very mysterious now, but essentially I've had a couple relatives who have been mugged
Yeah.
and in different cities.
but I think also trying to stay as autonomous as possible, right? That you're not just going and getting a random taxi here
Yeah.
or trusting somebody that you just met here. So
Yep.
always, and I think in America, like everything is run systematically and you could like go and complain to some authority if like somebody did something that was dishonest. It doesn't always run that way in other countries. And so if you were going to Disney World and that somebody would get in big trouble if they were outside Disney World and said, hey, you need to park here, and they look like they have a Disney shirt on and be like, this is where you park. They would get in trouble for that. People would complain. Disney would say, hey, you can't do that. That's actually not normal in a lot of other countries in the world, where they will have people who have a parking lot and they will put on a very official looking shirt and hold a clipboard and say, park here. They're not trying to mug you, even though people on our channel were sure that's what they were trying to do. It's
Yeah.
like, no, they're just trying to make money.
Right.
And so it's like, first of all, that's not seen as criminal for them. That's just how business works there.
Yeah.
Just like when you go in you're in Fez and you're walking down this alley.
This is Morocco Megan's talking about.
Yeah, and somebody says this costs $10. They don't actually expect you to pay $10 for it.
Yeah.
That's just how their culture works, and they actually think you're going to get it down to $6.
Uh-huh.
And because that's how it goes. It's part of the culture, and so they're not being dishonest with you. And if you're frustrated, like, oh, they're ripping me off, it's like, no, you're a foreigner. You don't
Yeah.
know how it works here.
Yeah.
And the same with parking, and nothing bad will happen. You'll just have to walk further if you park there. But being able to be independent, and I'll have a little bit of like
situational awareness.
and also like personal power. What do you call
Sure,
that?
yeah, you can
Confidence.
say no.
Yeah.
You can
Like,
drive right by
no.
you can drive right by the guy who's trying to wave you into a
He'll
parking
have a
lot.
look on his face like,
But you
but
just
it's just an act.
just
yeah.
keep on going.
And that's where research comes in, and knowing those things beforehand. We're probably terrifying everybody, but so I think, what it does is it lets people know that you're not easily taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And so if you're like, what? Explain that to me. Like, they're going to be like, oh, so we're like, no, I don't want that. I don't want that. And they're like, okay. But when it is official, it's pretty obvious. Like, it really is official, and they'll know. They'll be like, what do you mean you don't want that? You have to have a ticket to go
Yeah,
in
when
here.
you get
Yeah.
if you're going to parking, don't pull over till you're at the gate.
Yeah, those
Either
sorts
going
of
through
things.
it or they've got something right there.
And so that may not apply universally, but what I'm saying
Yeah.
is it's part of the adventure, and it's fun for the kids to be there as long as you don't get stressed. You can laugh it off. It's part of the memory that you create. And so I feel like it's been a gift for me and for the kids to experience other cultures and to recognize that most people in this world are honest. Because I think I find it a little bit offensive that people think if you go to these countries, everybody's trying to rob you. It's like, most people don't want to rob other people because it's wrong.
Yeah.
And in other countries, they believe in right and wrong too.
Yeah.
Other people are good people too.
And you can avoid the places where you're going to, again, this has to do with research. Like when we went to Morocco, we went to Fez. We didn't go to Marrakesh because Marrakesh is kind
Crazier.
of notoriously aggressive when you're walking through the markets, excuse me, with people trying to sell you things and trying to oversell you on things. So we're like, you know what? We're going to skip Marrakesh, go to Fez. So you can also look ahead and make some decisions about where you're going to be. Not that would have been horrible to be in Marrakesh, but we just knew like we didn't want to deal with that. So
Yeah,
you can kind of prevent some of that.
And I do think it skips families, because I think if you actually look at the crime in a lot of these places, like Tulum is a less safe city in Mexico, and we stayed outside of Tulum one of the nights we were there, and spent some time during the day there, a couple of days, and it was full of bars and nightclubs.
Sure. It's a different atmosphere.
And so it's like, those are the people getting robbed. The ones who are walking out
Drunk down the street.
yeah, of these nightclubs, thinking like, it's like, because once you don't have that personal power anymore.
Sure.
So you're so easy.
You're easy pickings.
Yeah.
And that's what they're going for.
Yeah, like families are not easy pickings. We're trouble.
Yeah.
And
Too
we
many of
aren't
us.
going to the nightclubs. We're not trying to buy weed from the guy on the beach, like, or like going and meeting him somewhere. Like, I just feel like it's not as unsafe out there as you think it is.
Yeah,
Most
because
people are nice.
you're
They
gonna
want your
avoid-
business.
Yeah.
They want tourists to come there. So they have police in both Morocco and Mexico. There were police everywhere.
Yeah. So
And
you're
you do
naturally going to
appreciate
avoid
that.
it.
Yeah.
Just by virtue of being a family and doing more family-friendly, in quotes, activities,
Yeah.
you are outside of most dangerous situations.
Yeah, you might overpay for some things, but I mean, really, it's funny how you have to remind yourself, like, okay, he got $2 off of you. You could have saved $2 because of the like currency.
If you would have
Yeah.
negotiated.
You're like, it's okay, guys, it's okay. It's $2. But so I think also checking in. There's a few ways I check in when we're walking down the street or we're in a certain place.
This has become like a travel advice
I know.
vlog.
I know.
or,
We're
I
gonna have
say
to do a
vlog,
part 2 where we actually
podcast.
talk about the education provided in it. But
I think we kind of are.
yeah, but I think first thing I do is I look around and I see other women and children out in this area.
Sure.
And especially mothers and grandmothers. If I see a mother or a grandmother walking alone in this area, I know I'm good,
Yeah.
right? Because women typically don't frequent and hang out in and shop dangerous areas. So that's one of the things I look for
Uh-huh.
in checking in. And I check in also with the way people are looking at me. People may be surprised to see us there,
Sure. Yeah.
but are they angry to see us there? There's a difference.
And we really have yet to see
No.
that.
And so most of the time, because you're like, oh, they're all looking at me like, what are you doing here? It's like, because there's no like touristy places. So they're just kind of surprised. Also, people are always looking at us everywhere we go because we have so many dang kids.
Yeah.
and 5 of them are Chinese. So that is confusing, and they don't know.
They know what to make of us.
Yeah. So I think those are a couple of things I do. But then I also check in internally. Humans have a really good sense of when something's not safe. When you're drunk, that sense is gone.
Yeah.
Right? But like when you're scared, actually think, like, check in. Like, sometimes we're scared because it's new. And I think most of the time we're scared because it's new.
Right. There isn't actually anything real there.
Yeah. But check in and how do I feel? And we're praying people, and we'll even, pray that morning that we'll be safe and that we'll be led and all of those things. But like check in with that part of you and like, I feel good. And help me to be protected, that sort of thing we definitely do. But I think so we've actually never been in a scenario where we felt unsafe. Amazingly.
We've been blessed that way, and we're grateful for that.
Yeah, we've been in some funny
Knock on
scenarios
wood.
with, like, when we went to Morocco, one day we went to this town to see this really old cemetery.
Uh-huh.
The parking was strange. But it doesn't mean it's wrong.
It was hard to understand where we were supposed to be
And
going.
we never knew if maybe, because I think we paid like $10 to park there.
I don't remember.
That was probably like a lot of money, but who cares? It was only $10. But at that moment, you're like, am I doing this wrong? Am I the stupid one? And it's like, doesn't matter. Just pay this guy, this random guy who was laying on a cardboard box the moment you drove up and hops up and says you need to pay him $10. You're like, all right, whatever. And then as we were walking, there was a cute little kid.
Yeah, he
Remember
showed
this?
up out of nowhere.
He's probably like 8.
Uh-huh.
And he speaks a little bit of English. He's like, oh, I show you. And like really excited to take us.
He's our little tour guide.
Yeah, he wouldn't. We were like, no, we're okay. But he wouldn't leave.
Yeah.
And it was kind of endearing. And then what became really endearing is when we got to the cemetery. It's not a huge town.
Yeah.
I don't know if this guy was related to him or what, but he's like, what are you doing here?
He's
Like,
yelling at the kid.
he's like, hey, get out of here. And the kid's like hiding behind headstones and like, shh, don't say anything. Because he hasn't gotten his money off of us yet. The few dollars for showing us where the cemetery was. And he did show us.
Yeah, he showed us around.
It was kind of funny. And so it's moments like that. And you don't feel unsafe. You can be annoyed, but there's no reason to. None of these people have malice. It's just the way it works there, even if you're not used to it. So, yeah, we could keep going. I guess all of that being said is when you're in those moments, it's stressful. No matter how many times you've done it, it becomes much less stressful, but it's still a little bit stressful. But I really think you'll find that stressful becomes delicious to you, and you miss being out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
You crave going to a place where nobody speaks English. You crave going to a place where it's like your eyes can't take it all in and you're a little bit overwhelmed. I mean, we could keep telling stories about different stressful things that are happening, but I really do believe that's where the magic is, because when you're in a stressful situation, time slows down because suddenly your brain's like, whoa. I need to be here and present in this moment.
That's true.
And if you go and you're sitting by a pool, that trip is over. And you're not even really sure what you did when you get back. Like, oh, we sat by the pool. And I'm not saying there isn't a time for sitting by the pool and all of that. But the days are long when you're on an adventure. And they're stressful at times. They're exciting. They're exhilarating. And when you are in those moments where you're so present and time is like slowly ticking away.
Right.
Because your brain's not anywhere else. And when someone else is there with you, it is a very bonding experience. And if you've ever been through something difficult, like a car accident or a stressful situation with someone, you feel very close to them afterwards.
That's true. Yep.
And I don't know if you feel really close to someone afterwards after sitting by a pool with them for a few days. I don't know. Maybe you had some good conversations there. I don't know. But I do know it's not the same.
Yeah.
I do know that some of our even most stressful moments, we all look back at and they were very bonding for us, and we laugh about them, or like, oh my gosh, wasn't that so crazy? Or just how incredibly close our family has become because we went on these adventures together.
Yep.
Even laying around in airports, even like knowing somebody is being rude to us and we can look at each other, you feel closer to each other in those moments.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel closer to you when I see you being patient on a travel day. I'm going to guess you do with me too.
Yeah, for sure.
Like you love each other more. You're proud of each other.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, it's not like we don't see each other lose it.
Well, then you learn to be patient with each other too, because you
Yeah.
know that you're both stressed or whatever.
Yeah. And you learn to dig deep into those reservoirs. But those are the moments that make it magical. And that is the gift of travel. The stress of travel is the gift of travel as well. And because what we noticed in the 2 years of travel that we did is they felt like a lifetime.
Yeah, I also, a disclaimer, Eve is being loud in the background. So we record this from
No
home.
place like
so
home.
If you hear, you probably hear Eve. We're here at home. But yes, I agree.
I mean, remember when we came back and we'd been home for a year, we were kind of horrified because we were like, think of all of the life we experienced
I know.
in a year of travel versus a year at home.
Well, it went by so much quicker, and you'd have
And
so
you had
much
nothing
less
to
to like
say for
really
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
Which, not that there's not valuable things there, but it's just different.
Just the way that travel, I'm going to say travel outside of the resort system.
Right.
What it requires of you makes time slow down, and it fills it up with memories. And so it becomes rich.
Yeah.
And you can't get that any other way. And now that is, I mean, domestic travel can be very stressful too. So it's not
within
like
your country, wherever you happen to be.
Yeah, and so I think we should also talk today, and I want to have a 2-part. I want to talk another podcast about this.
Okay.
But I do want to talk about, I'm sure that many of you, because we have been there with you and will continue to be, will say, yes, but travel is expensive.
Right.
And it is.
And time consuming too.
Yeah. And so I know there have been times in our life where people say, oh, but it's worth it. Well, it doesn't matter if it's worth it. I don't have $40 to like buy groceries with. I can't go travel. Right.
Right.
And so I understand there are phases of life that are like that. And we've definitely had those phases. But I'm also here to tell you that you don't have to get as rich as you think you do before you can start. And also to tell you that someday you'll have more than $40 to your name, sort of thing. That you can figure things out and be led to new ideas and new situations. So there's hope ahead. That nothing lasts forever, including financial distress.
Right.
For anybody who's there right now. But I think before, because we had never been used to it, we'd never seen our parents do it, that was something that the fabulously wealthy did. And so I remember how much it blew our minds when we just bought tickets to Paris.
Yeah.
First of all, they weren't as expensive as we thought.
Helped their one way, but yeah.
Yeah, they were like $250. It also helped that they're out of New York City.
Right.
You know, and Mike could have a million tips on how to make travel cheaper for families because we do everything times 10, literally.
I know. It's not cheap.
So sometimes people are like, oh, Disney's not that expensive. It's like, it is if you multiply it times 10.
Yeah, or 11 when we actually went.
But yes, it's going to cost some money. And in fact, when we went to Peru, that trip ended up being mucho dinero.
Twice as expensive as we thought it was going to.
Like 3 or 4 or
Because
5 times as expensive as we thought.
We had plans change halfway through.
Yeah, and so we came home
you can watch the videos.
Wowza, that was a lot more expensive than we thought, and definitely we had a tight budget, and we just blew it.
Yeah.
And so at first we were like, oh man, was that wise?
Like, did we just torpedo our finances completely
for a few months? But before we end, I mean, before you start to talk about that specifically, I want to just say we are so glad we went to Peru. Wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change a thing.
And we got over it. We worked it out.
Yeah, it was. Totally worth it. Totally worth it.
That is a huge shared memory for everybody, and so on so many levels.
Trip.
Yeah, but it's true. Travel is expensive. And I think it does. Sometimes it requires some sacrifice. You have to make choices as far as where you're spending your money. And I feel like some people, there's a sentiment that I've got to save my money for retirement and I'll travel when I'm older and retired, sort of thing. And to me, that makes zero sense because you're depriving yourself and your family of the experience of traveling together when that happens. And it's great for you and your spouse to do it someday. But maybe you should spread that out a little bit more and maybe divert some of that money that you're saving for the future to use it now while your kids are at home, while you're developing these relationships and invest in that, because really that is such a huge part of it. And again, maybe we'll talk more about it, but the cohesiveness it creates with your family and your relationships, is it just goes into the big, I guess, the bigger picture of creating a unified family. Because obviously you can do that without traveling, but if you can, it's a great piece of that pie.
I do think that there's nothing that does it as effectively as travel, even if it's just camping.
Sure, it can be little things. It doesn't have to be huge, because it all requires kind of some of the things we're talking about, and it does require time because a lot of times parents only have so much vacation time, and so you have to decide how you're going to spend that time. But again, I think the time and the money is well spent because not only for the experiences but also relationship building that you're doing.
Yeah, and sometimes I think parents think I only have so much time and I need a break from the kids.
Right.
And I understand that, guys. I have 9 kids, so it's not like I don't understand that. But I actually have yet to be on a trip where I get the break, quote unquote, from the kids and come back like, oh, I'm so full and I'm so patient. I actually usually find it's the opposite. I get back and I'm like, man, I'm just as impatient as I was before. I actually think when we take the kids along, we
I think so. It's actually it's more of a recharge.
Yeah, and then we also learn how to be more patient.
Yeah.
And our kids do too. Like this last trip, I was so proud of everybody. We were doing stuff and I wasn't saying anything. I wasn't explaining like, okay, this is when we're going to eat. Everybody did really well. Even Eve. And it's harder for Eve, right? She doesn't understand quite as much and she has a little harder time.
Well, and if people are listening that don't know Eve has Down syndrome. Therefore, she has her specific sort of
needs,
personality and needs.
Yeah, and so we don't need the break as often because our kids are becoming more resilient. They're becoming more patient. It's helping them become good humans. And I think travel does that. I also think being part of a big family does that. I mean, just in requiring patience and working with other people. And so some of the times we create these scenarios thinking it will help us handle the other. But it's like saying, oh, I have to run a marathon, and so I got to take a break because I'm going to be doing a lot of running, so I'm not going to run for a while.
Right.
That actually doesn't work. The marathon's going to be so much harder if you take a break from running. Absolutely.
At least too much of a break.
Self-care is important. I take breaks for my kids. We go on dates. But I would say that your family will be easier to be around if you take them along on your trips.
Yeah, that's a good point. It seems a little counterintuitive. Anyhow, so
what are some of the things?
We've talked a lot about travel.
Money. It's just to finish that thought.
Yes.
Mike and I often talk about what's the point of money? Money is just a commodity that helps you do things. And so if you are working all the time and you have no time freedom, what was the point of money? Mm-hmm. Like so that you could just make piles of it somewhere, or you could have a really fancy house that you're never in.
Right.
Or what was the point? So you could have a car that looks really nice and then people respect you for it. Like what was the point of the money if it doesn't give you joyful experiences, if it doesn't
help
support
you
your family
connection.
Be happy, or you to be happy as an individual. And so sometimes when people talk about the expense of travel, it's like, but what's that? We're alive right now. This is the point.
Yeah.
And so it makes us grow closer as a family. I mean, I don't know how we would have taken our kids and helped them grow as close as they are now if we hadn't thrown them all in an RV for a year together. I mean, Daniel and Eve and Jude had only come home a few months before.
Yeah.
When we suddenly threw them all in this RV together, and people would, like, oh, you're forcing your kids to do that. And it's like, yeah, we are. And if we hadn't done that, Daniel would have probably went and gotten some friends at school, and Elijah and Andrew would have had their friends at school, and they would have never hung out. They wouldn't have had the need to.
Yeah.
They had nobody else but each other, all of our kids. And so they became very close, and they were playing games together, they were socializing together and having all of these shared experiences. And so we're very close because of that. And we're a very tight ship, because of that. So 2020 and 2021, when our kids couldn't be around their peers as much, well, they had all of these peers that they had so many shared experiences and so much friendship with. So
it wasn't quite the tough
trauma,
adjustment.
Yeah, that a lot of kids had, which is legitimate trauma. I'm not saying it's not, but
thanks to that time we spent.
Yeah, and so, dude, that's what money's for. That's why we work, is so that we can have this sort of joy in our life and we can support the happiness of our home. And part of supporting that is travel. And like I said, all of the things we described, you can experience in a camping trip. In fact, that's why we usually avoid camping. Because it requires patience and planning and hunger. And I mean, think about how
camping
often
is its own thing.
Yeah, you're sitting around the campfire and it's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, and dinner's still not done because you were cooking it on the campfire, and everybody's just sitting there wondering when it's gonna be done.
Well,
so,
yeah,
and camping's cheap, so
that's one thing my family did do a lot of, and that was great. And those are valuable experiences too. So I don't want to go down on any specific type of travel or those experiences. Whatever works for you and your family. I think the point is be intentional and do it, and spend the time and the money to make that happen.
Yeah, and obviously some of you might say, well, you're just making me feel bad because I can't do it. It's like, well, I mean, we had times where we couldn't do it either.
Yeah.
But for those of you who are interested in travel, it's not just a nice thing. It can be a huge blessing and a huge tool in a parent's tool belt in helping their family be healthy, helping their children become resilient, patient, selfless adults. Because travel is not self-centered. I mean, I guess you can see some people who travel in a self-centered way, but it's pretty obvious when you're out there who's doing that, who's not. People who are rude, people who are just rude to everybody along the way, rude to their drivers, rude to the people working in the airport or the different terminals or the different restaurants. But the rest of us learn to just be patient, and that's really good, and that's really good for your kids.
Someone's knocking on our door.
So, I mean, we could talk about travel forever.
I know.
And I do want to talk, next time I want to talk about I want to share some specific stories about travel and how it's changed individual children, how it's enhanced our education or our children's educational pursuits, and why visiting the site is so different than reading about it in a textbook.
Right.
And why that's awesome. And
Okay.
and I'm a total believer. And I'll also add, I know some travelers out there, Indian family, I'm looking at you, who have traveled on the shoestring of all shoestring budgets.
Yeah.
It's possible. And they find crazy deals on flights. They all cram in, like sleep on sofas and on, like mats on the floor so they can get smaller, Airbnbs or whatever. And then they do everything on the cheap, making little lunches wherever you're at and taking them along with you and cooking as much as you can on your own. And so then they get to have these experiences. So if you're out there and you're like, it just seems so crazy, cost prohibitive, you can actually just buy tickets and go somewhere. It's pretty crazy. Every time we do it, it blows my mind. And then we're just there and we're in a different part of the world and we're just there and it's crazy. So it's possible. It will take some planning and some sacrifice, but it will be worth it.
Yeah. There's lots of information out there, lots of YouTube videos about cheap travel. So it's possible. But I think we'll leave it there because we've been talking for a while. So, we appreciate everyone listening. We always like sharing some time with you. And rate or review the podcast if you feel so inclined. We appreciate it. And otherwise, I think that's the end. So we gotta say bye-bye.
Bon voyage.
Sayonara. Okay. Bye.
Bye.